Hi, folks. Welcome back to Heard on the Axe, the East Coast premier music talk show. My name is Rich Rogenmoser. This segment of the show is sponsored by Mackie Electronics. Don't forget about the big Mackie giveaway May 14th at the Music Exchange. Go to richesmusicexchange.com or call 716-646-6240 for information on the big PA giveaway. Right now, I want to welcome Rudy Sarzo to the phone. How you doing, Rudy?
Hey, I'm doing great. How you doing, Rich?
I'm doing well, man. Thank you so much for taking some time to talk to us. What new things do you have going on right now, Rude?
Oh boy, oh boy, just super busy in the studio and touring and doing rock and roll fantasy camp and just a whole lot of stuff going on. We were with Lita Ford over January at the NAMM show. And she was, I think you were on that rock and roll fantasy camp, maybe in the Bahamas or something like that. Were you guys together on that? Yeah, we did the TV show together last year, and she was at the camp in the Bahamas.
Yeah,
she's an old friend of mine. You know, I love her dearly. She's incredible.
Yeah, you have had a very colorful career, and you're a phenomenal bass player. And I wanted to talk to you. A mutual friend of ours, hooked us up talking about Off the Rails, which is kind of it's a book of you getting the gig with Ozzy, and reuniting with your friend Randy Rhoades, right?
Yeah, basically, my motivation for writing the book was to answer the number one question I get asked when I travel around the world, which is, what was it like to play with Randy Rhoades? And so every time I would get together with a fan and spend 5 minutes telling them one or a couple of stories, I would always walk away feeling like, oh boy, I should have told them this or the other story or whatever, So I figure, I might as well just sit down, write everything I experienced, not only with Randy during the Ozzy period, but also with Randy in the Quiet Riot, because I'm the only musician that's been blessed to have played with Randy in both Quiet Riot and Ozzy Osborne.
And actually, it was your time with Randy and Quiet Riot that actually opened the door for your chance to audition with Ozzy, correct?
Correct. Yeah, Randy was responsible for introducing me to Ozzy and Sharon.
The book is amazing, my friend, and it's one thing that strikes me is, are you a documenter? Do you document a lot? I mean, do you keep folder and folder and folder of different things, because it's really, really well written and well documented?
Well, thank you. Yeah, you know what? The Ozzy Blizzard of Oz tour was my first paying job I ever had. So at the advice of my family's accountant, I kept records of my travels. And something that I did not do afterwards, because I realized that I was being a little anal about it, just getting all the details. So, but during my Ozzy period, I did do that. Then after that, I had accountants and business managers taking care of all that for me. But for that first tour, I kept accounts of everything.
And it has to be, though, even more than just, I mean, maybe the accounting got you into doing it, but there's some vivid memories that you remember in detail, and it's really interesting seeing how you go from sleeping on your lead singer's floor to getting a phone call where at first you almost didn't accept the gig, right?
Yeah, I was playing with Angel at the time, and I made a commitment, and, after I hung up the phone, actually Sharon was the first person to call me. Then the following day, Ozzy called me after they went through, they had a day of auditions, and they haven't found the guy, and Randy kept telling him that, that I was the guy. And so Ozzy himself called me the next day. By then I had meditated on it, and, and I was ready to, go down.
Yeah. And regretted it. So, just to cover this for the people that are listening, Rudy is basically sleeping on his buddy's floor, and he gets a phone call from Sharon Osbourne, and he declines the invitation to come down and audition for the band because he was already committed to another band, which is honorable, very honorable. But lightning luckily struck twice, where Ozzy called you the next day and you said, "I'll be there. I'm going to come."
Yeah, exactly. Thank God for that. Yeah. Yeah. Actually, it was Sharon Arden because Sharon wasn't even married to Ozzy yet. They didn't get married until 1982, July 4th.
That's right. That's right. There's a couple interesting things that I think locals here in Western New York would like to talk about. And one of the things that I found interesting, we've all seen the footage, which you state in the book is the only professional footage really done of Randy, which was done in a studio. Was that studio in Rochester, my friend? Was that in Rochester, New York?
Right. Correct, Rochester, New York. And now that you mentioned that, okay, that was a three-camera professional, well, semi-professional shoot because it was at a public access studio. So yeah, it was pro. But there's a box set that's coming out at the end of May this year, which is it's the celebrating 30 years of Blizzard of Oz and Diary of the Madman, and they have found this footage that it was a photographer that had a photo pass. He was in the pit at our Palladium show, which was 2 weeks into the tour, and he happened to have with him also an 8mm camera with sound. So there's actually new footage of us performing live.
Oh, really? That's fantastic.
Yeah. It's just one camera, and it's got great sound, great video, and it was amazing to watch that. So that's part of the box set that's coming out.
And that's going to be out in May.
Yeah, out in May, and also a new, cleaned up, remastered version of that presentation that we're talking about right now, which is us playing like 3 or 4 songs. Yeah, I believe it was 3 songs in Rochester.
Yeah, and it was fun.
Hours.
And it's funny when you're reading the book because, I own a big independent music store on top of doing the show. And when I talk to kids that come in my store, to a kid that's 15, 16, even a kid that's 20, 21, Ozzy is a god. And you try to explain to them, when the original split happened between Black Sabbath and Ozzy, everyone's money was on Black Sabbath. They had Ronnie James Dio. That was the band that was going to succeed. Ozzy was kind of secluded and kind of made himself irrelevant for a while. And really, you guys deserve so much credit for putting Ozzy back on the map because he put a really strong touring band together and did it twice. I mean, you guys weren't playing arenas. You were playing 1,200 seaters, 3,000 seaters. There's another excerpt in the book where you and Randy are flying in New York City in a glass-bottom helicopter, and you point down at Madison Square Garden and you say that you want to play there someday.
Yeah, I mean that was like the dream gig, and ironically, it's the leg of the tour that we had just. Because we took a break, and about 3 days before the crash, we were flying from LA to Atlanta, and as we were there at to start, the new leg of the tour, and we were handed the tour book of the upcoming dates, and we see right there Madison Square Garden, and it was like, wow, finally we're gonna play this. And unfortunately, we did play it, but without Randy because he about 3 days later he passed away. In the crash.
Right. Yeah. When you got the itinerary, yeah. Can you talk about the crash? I mean, it's been years since it.
You know what? It's really painful, and
I can understand. I totally understand.
Yeah.
I mean,
to go into details, I have to go back there again, and it's just like that's what once I was able to lay it down on the paper, and it was an incredible weight that was lifted off my shoulders because finally I was able to put it down on a sheet of paper and look at it, and it gave me closure basically.
Yeah, it was healthy for you. It was probably healthy for you to document that and get it down, and I can completely understand where you're coming from. One of the interesting things that I find in the book too, though, is you as a young man, and you give the reader a really good exposure to you being a young, not naive as far as being a musician, but naive as far as heavy duty touring and your first exposures to it, where at first you weren't. You weren't allowed to party or weren't into partying, and Randy had warned you not, that Ozzy's going to test you, and then a couple of times you slipped up and it didn't seem to go very well for you. A few times that you actually had.
Yeah. It wasn't as much being tested by Ozzy or Sharon. It was just the fact that here we are. We were like within a week from going on the road, and they bring in this new guy who has never had any experience on the road with them, only by from Randy's recommendation. That's all they were going by. I could have been a total maniac or whatever. So they're putting there's a lot of carrying on this tour. This is Ozzy's first solo tour in the United States, and there's a lot of money being put into it and everything. So I understand them being a little cautious about me or anybody that will come into the band, with such short notice, not really knowing the individual. But it was pretty easy for me for a couple of things. One of them, that's Randy really showed me the ropes. He had been already on tour with Ozzy in England prior to the American tour, and they were really, really nice people. Ozzy and Sharon really took great care of not only me but the whole band.
Yeah, and like I say, it's interesting to see. There's I don't want to give away a lot of the book because people should really read this book. It's an excellent documentary of rock and roll. But like I was saying, it was like Ozzy was starting over again. So there are periods where there's shows being canceled. There's a somewhat down feeling at times by the band because Randy mentions to you that in England, it was completely different. Shows sold out immediately. The album did better. America was harder. So it was very much like a band trying to make it again. And you guys all deserve a lot of credit for really giving Ozzy that live foundation that that shot him back into the stratosphere. I think you guys did a fantastic job.
Yeah, it was an interesting time because it's still in 1981. Radio was very much into pop and new wave. They were not really gravitating towards the music that we were doing. Our music was a bit too hard for them. Still, the new wave of metal from the UK had not reached the States yet, like it did maybe a couple of years later. Later on with Quiet Riot for the Mental Health album. We took advantage of that new wave of metal, with bands like Def Leppard and Iron Maiden, that were really getting a lot of attention on MTV. So, but in 1981, it was a whole different story.
Well, and like you had mentioned, even in the book, there was no internet, there was no MTV. Might have just started, but it certainly wasn't the juggernaut that it became. And you looked for rock and roll magazines to see what people thought of you guys, and if you guys made it on the cover or not.
Yeah, and in the old days, it would take about, if you did an interview today for Circus Magazine, it would not come out until like maybe 6 months later.
Oh, no kidding. So there was that long of a lag.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, it's like 3 months, 3 months, 6 months, it depending on the urgency of the article itself, how hot the band was at the time.
No kidding. We could talk for days and days and days. I know that you have a big schedule ahead of you. Is it possible, would you come back on down the road and talk to us a little bit more in detail about things?
Yeah, of course, I would love to. Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on, and like I mentioned, the Ozzy Osborne release of the 30 years of Blizzard of Oz and Diary of the Madman celebration, the box set. I really urge everybody to check it out. It's really amazing.
Yeah, and that's going to be coming out in May. And, of course, pick up a copy of Off the Rails. It's absolutely a fantastic book. I really, really, really recommend it. And everybody in Western New York, there's a bunch of Western New York references about you guys playing at Shays here in Buffalo, about that, obviously, the video that we've all seen, the quality video that we've all seen happening 60 miles down the road in Rochester, New York. It's a great book, Rudy. Thank you so much for your time, and you are a gentleman and just a wonderful person. We'll talk to you soon, my friend.
Thank you so much, Rich. God bless.
All right, my friend. Stick around, folks. We're going to go to a commercial break. On the other side, more Heard It on the X.